Welcome back to the Superheroes Everyday podcast. I'm Danny Horn, and I'm here with Stuart Manning. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
This is Act 2 of the 1997 high-kicking hit parade, Batman and Robin. The story so far, God, I don't know. There's a bunch of cartoon characters who are living in a toy box called Gotham City, and mostly they just chase each other around in cars and motorcycles and rocket ships. Arnold Schwarzenegger is very upset because his wife has one of those fatal diseases where you look totally fine, but they have to put you in a giant water tank. And he needs to steal a bunch of real big diamonds. That's going to cure his wife somehow. Meanwhile, Uma Thurman's all dressed up in a red wig and a green leotard, and she thinks she's the queen of plants, which is debatable. And then Batman and Robin are kind of hanging around in the background, trying to make some kind of impression on the audience. There, that's you all caught up. Welcome to Act 2. So one question that I have, getting into Act 2, is kind of what sort of expectations folks should have coming into this film. Back in 2011, I went to see, there was a touring arena show called Batman Live, which was kind of like
Which
this.
looks exactly like this.
Yeah, it was kind of like,
I remember the photos.
it was fantastic. I went. It was delicious. It was sort of the stunt spectacular with like acrobats and people flipping around, having fight scenes, basically dance numbers with like a ton of different villains. So you don't go into a show like that thinking like this is a show about the world's greatest detective battling his personal demons. Like you go in thinking, I want to see some loud, colorful, crazy shit. And basically you leave the show and it feels like you've been on a roller coaster. Like you're just kind of like excited and kind of tired, but like super pumped up. And I think that's what this movie's trying to do. And so my question for you is like, do you think it is amping people up in that way?
I think there's an odd little tug of war that's going on through it where every once in a while it feels like it has to be a proper movie for a bit. Mostly the Alfred stuff, which is suddenly the lighting is dialed down, the performances are dialed down, and there are
Right.
people doing some reverent, in inverted commas, proper acting. And I think it does have a sort of problem is like you're going, well, when can we get to the next big set? I'm just
Right.
not really interested in this. I did find there's a quote from Clooney that I think sort of summed it up, which summed up his approach, but I think it does sum up the question this movie is grappling with, which I'll read it. It's like he's a 35-year-old guy who lives in a giant mansion, has billions of dollars, and goes out with the most beautiful women in the world. I don't think anyone is going to feel sorry for him going, woe is me, my parents died.
Hmm.
And I think that's what this film is struggling from is like, how do you liberate Bruce from all that Dark Knight angst?
Right. But still like give him something to play.
And even in the wake of Batman Forever, where I mean, literally his love interest is his psychiatrist. So we
Right.
can psychoanalyze him to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't really know where there was to go from there, other than to
Hmm.
kill Robin, which clearly this is not the film you would do that in.
Right.
But you then have who is Bruce if at this point if he's not this kind of brooding, troubled person, and Clooney does not have an answer to that quite
Right.
clearly, and so he plays him as a sort of genial presence, and is even to the point where he's sort of delivering lines that do not he should not be smirking through with a smirk.
He smiles all of the time, no matter what. Even when he says like Alfred has
Alfred's
a
dying.
fatal disease.
Yeah, no, Alfred's dying.
Yeah, he sort of like nods and smiles. It's very, very strange.
And is that an actor who just really wants to be liked?
Yeah.
I wonder, is that a sort of a slight vanity thing that I'm a likable star and I'm playing, and maybe he's playing it that Bruce is an incredibly likable, charismatic person. But
Yeah.
there are some very odd choices in that respect where I think it's meant to be to make Bruce careworn, but it makes him look mildly like a sociopath.
I guess the question is like if Joel Schumacher is there talking through a megaphone and saying, "Now remember, George, this is a cartoon," but they're not giving him like a cartoony character or cartoony lines that he's like,
No,
"Well, I can't play tragic with these lines."
yeah, and so it there is this weird thing that it kind of I guess what they decided they were going for is they're going to make this a family unit, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the nearest this film has to a theme, I suppose, is
Right.
that we form. the people we find ourselves closest to, we form a family with, whether they're actually a conventional one or not,
Right.
and our lives are enriched for that. And that's, I think, for what was aiming to be a family movie, that's a really good way of providing a through line for these very disparate characters if you're not going to take them down the angst route.
Right.
The problem it has is then that Clooney has to be dad.
Yeah.
So he's basically mostly sitcom dad telling the kids things they can't do.
Right. And that is kind of where all the Batman and Robin tension is that Robin is being a teenager.
And therefore it kind of pulls you into really unhelpful directions. It makes
Yeah.
Batman this boring square dude who's not
Yeah.
upholding law and order. He's sort of telling the kids to behave.
Right.
And it also simultaneously, I think, makes Barbara and Dick really juvenile.
Yes.
More
Yeah.
so than they should be or really have any cause to be.
We get to go to the flower ball. So this is kind of, if you want another big scene, I think this is the other really big scene. But what we got here is a gorilla. So this is apparently a reference to Marlene Dietrich in Blonde Venus, where she performs a number in a gorilla suit and kind of stomps around as the gorilla and then slowly takes off the hands and then takes off the mask, and it's this beautiful Marlene Dietrich inside.
See, I love that. That's just such as a reference to stick in a Happy Meal film for 8-year-olds.
No, yeah, it's so odd. Poison Ivy here, she's got, so now we're really, this is a big costume, which I am not that happy with. Like, it's a leotard, she's got some green accessories, and she's got the bright red hair. I think my issue is the hair, is the wigs.
The color or the styling?
They kind of just like hang down on her. They look like it does not look like, oh, she has all this luscious red hair. It looks like she is wearing a very weird long wig that's kind of hanging on her.
I think the red costume she has later is much nicer, and it's got like fawny bits on it, so it looks kind of organic. There was, in one of the special features I watched, there was the costume designer lamenting that they did not have enough time to fabricate the latex. So maybe,
oh, is that right?
Yeah, so maybe it's more simplified than it was meant to be.
Okay,
I think you're right. It is just a green leotard.
Yeah.
And
there are some little accessories, but like one thing that we don't see actually with Poison Ivy is we don't see her controlling plants.
I know what you mean. Given we're in a room full of plants.
Yeah.
That does feel a bit of a missed opportunity.
We see Freeze, like he comes in, he is definitely in charge of cold. He creates snow, he creates ice, he freezes things, but we don't really see her. I mean, it is odd. Like, I like the weirdness of the Marlene Dietrich reference with her being a gorilla, but like being a gorilla doesn't fit in with her actual theme as a character.
No.
And this is a jungle themed event.
There is a sort of mixed metaphor in there somewhere, isn't there? I like the sequence though. I like the space and the styling. And it feels like we've got back to a very big, over-decorated room. And
this
film, I think, happily inhabits those. And I do, the other thing I really like about this that feels oddly, possibly the most relatable thing in the whole film is Batman and Robin turning up as celebrities at this thing and are clearly bored and do not know what to do. They're sort of stood at the edge and they're sort of at the edge of the stage and they're kind of shuffling from one foot to another, looking thoroughly, embarrassed to be there.
And they're being upstaged.
And yes.
Which is just not an experience that Batman and Robin should ever have. Something funny about Batman just being here as Batman is that, does Bruce Wayne, is he sponsoring? I think he's sponsoring.
He's sponsoring, yeah.
And does not show up to the fancy party.
If it was the 60s show, they would be making a whole farce out of that.
Right, if he goes back and forth
behind pillars and coming out as Batman and just missing each other.
Yeah. And they did a little of that in Batman Forever, where like he's at the circus as Bruce and then has to like duck out and change. So here he's just there. He's just there as Batman. And this is where Poison Ivy blows some smoke at him and flirts with him. I kind of have a problem with the smoke, which I believe I mentioned earlier, of just like, she's supposed to be sexy and kind of thrilling these people, and she only does it by drugging people.
it is an odd thing because actually the body language of the crowd isn't really there. They are mesmerized by her before this happens, so
Mm-hmm.
it is arguable that she doesn't need to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, and with Commissioner Gordon, I mean, he's such a stooge. He doesn't
Yeah.
need training. And I
Right.
think it's actually is the joke less funny
Yeah.
if the joke surely is that no man can resist her,
Right. Yes.
and that's the and there's it's a short leap to play that as farce and for it to be
Hmm.
very funny, which they sort of do in the scene because the whole
Yeah.
stuff about Batman and Robin trying to outbid each other these ridiculous amounts is
Yes.
totally the joke. But yes, it does have a sort of
But yeah,
it does,
I think you're right. I would like it better if it was just that she is so beautiful. Like that would position her as
mhm.
being super important and special
It'd make it more
in a way that,
dangerous.
yeah, that I think it like kind of undercuts by saying, no, it's because of this powder, and it's a power that's going to wear off after a while.
Hmm.
It means there
Yeah,
isn't kind of like that sexual connection between them.
yeah. But that's where, as you were saying earlier, it's an oddly coy film in that respect.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you know,
don't know if that part is queer as much as just like it's the absence of straightness rather than like the presence of
well, I
gayness.
suppose there is the sort of slightly smirking, subversive thing that the dumbest thing two guys could possibly be doing is arguing over a woman.
That is true.
But
Yes, yeah.
yes, actually, there's no. I think beyond that and being a bit gaudy, I don't think that actually is.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a leap to say that that's being consciously queer or anything like that.
Mr. Freeze comes in.
He does.
He invades, just like once again drives his Freeze mobile like through plate glass windows. Everybody has to smash stuff every time they enter a room. These people cannot just enter a room normally.
Everything goes up a notch. You can also tell, I think, because it's literally where the money is.
Right.
Everyone's attention goes up a couple of notches
When he shows up. Yeah.
when he's on set and he's in close up.
Yeah. And then here's Freeze meeting Poison Ivy. And I like his dialogue. He's like, well, look at you. Let me guess. Plant girl, vine lady, hand over the diamond garden gal. And I like that he has his own jokes and is dismissive of her.
They keep sort of trying to make Mr. Freeze very quotable, and
Yeah.
sometimes with mixed success. Like they keep trying to make the Battenbird a thing, which I don't think it ever really lands in that way. But he keeps saying it nonetheless, and I
Right.
kind of if you he gives me the impression of someone who's written his material and he's committed to it and he's going to do. I like those two characters together.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, she's more interesting with him,
Yeah.
and I think the physicality between them plays well. They look
Mm-hmm.
good. They look better together than they do separately, which is
And I like that her pheromone dust doesn't work on him. That she tries, like she tries with everybody that she sees.
and
Um,
he's amused by that, just like he is by everything in this film.
yeah. And he calls her clever little Clover. He just has like little he's actually funny. And then he gets away again, despite the fact that he is enormous and very slow. And there's police here. Nobody seems the police are kind of amazing. Nobody actually wants to catch criminals in this movie at all.
No, well, it's they're having a nice night out, and you know,
Then there's a chase scene. We leave kind of Poison Ivy with Bane in his gorilla suit. And then Batman and Robin are actually like they're Batman's on he's in the Batmobile, Robin's on his Redbird cycle, and they are driving through Gotham City's very statue heavy architecture. This is a weird one where you kind of like are smashing through the big head and going down his shoulder, and then his arm is kind of pointed up, which Freeze uses as a ramp to get to another. It is for a stunt. It is very an unreal situation.
it feels to me, and maybe it plays exactly it feels like 8-year-olds playing with cars, toy
Yeah.
cars on weird surfaces,
Mm.
on the edge of the sofa, or I don't know. I know what you mean about like the visual storytelling of it, where I think there's quite a lot of sequences in that where you sort of two shots behind the action where you're kind of go, oh
Mm.
right, okay, that's what they are. They're going down the shoulder. But
Right. Yeah.
until they give this sort of very strange polished vista,
Yeah.
you don't really know what it is. great. It's got some great inserts in it. I think actually, like Chris O'Donnell looks amazing in the close-ups.
Hmm.
Intercut with the stunts. I thought actually that's really well edited, and those are really good hero shots. They're like sparks falling behind him, and
Yeah,
that's really well shot. But yeah, a lot of the surrounding, the sort of the money shots, just often they just make you scratch your head a bit.
I agree that Robin, like, he gets, this is a very emotional, weirdly emotional moment for him, where Batman decides that he's not going to make the jump, and he turns off the bird cycle remotely.
So again, Batman being dad confiscates the remote.
Yeah,
It really is that's kind of the level we're playing.
the way that this sequence ends is kind of that basically, like, both Freeze and the Batmobile make it onto this roof, and then they both just kind of stop,
Mm-hmm.
and they get out of the car, and now Batman has caught Mr. Freeze. And that's it. It's very kind of action figure of, like, you take Batman out of the Batmobile, you take Freeze out of the Freeze mobile, and they're next to each other, and now that means that he's caught.
Yeah, and it's a big jump cut, presumably because it would be ridiculous to try and dramatize how they get off this roof and all of that.
Right. Yeah. And where we jump to is another argument at the Batcave, where Robin's upset again. And it's Batman and Robin. It's not Robin and Batman. I'm sick of it. You're never going to trust me. Robin keeps declaring independence pretty much every 3 scenes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of revolution going on in the Batcave.
It's like he's just going to go away and sulk in his room for a bit, and then everything will be reset, and we'll have this argument again the next time
Right. Yeah, exactly.
you don't feel you're getting enough attention.
Yeah.
And it's sort of oddly, it is juvenile.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very sort of it's a sort of very stroppy. It's not even sort of teenage. It's like a sort of 8-year-old
Yeah.
mentality. I'm really upset about this, and now I sort of
And especially since it's
I see it in my friends' kids when they're sort of like,
yeah.
they're completely they're sobbing and they're completely incandescent about something, and then 30 seconds later they've like forgotten that and they're perfectly happy again. That's sort of
Because
the
it
way
wasn't really a real thing anyway. It was just, yeah,
right.
them overreacting. Yeah. And I think that is especially weird here because part of this is supposed to be sexual. That, like, they're upset about, they're both interested in Poison Ivy.
Mm.
And he's saying, like, she doesn't want you, she wants me. I'm the man, like the grown-up man that she really wants, but you don't, it's hard to feel that, like you say, because he's acting like a kid.
Again, I think no one. I mean, I think they are action figures in the truest sense. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're sort of eunuchs. I don't believe. I mean,
Anything.
do you believe? I mean, do you believe that this version of Robin is a virgin? I don't. I don't sort of get the impression he's ever. I couldn't believe. I'm not sure. I believe he's kissed a woman.
I think definitely, like, erasing all of the sexuality, I think, has to be, I mean, especially, it's such a weird movie, in this regard, that, like, that there's supposed to be this sexual rivalry subplot, which they
Mhm.
build up and keep referring to. But
But
then you don't really feel it.
also, I don't think you really feel it because neither of them really do anything about it.
Yeah,
They direct
exactly.
it
Yeah.
all at one another. They're not direct. It's not like they're really directing it at Poison Ivy.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
there's
sort of this idea that if you're sort of addled with pheromones and you're going crazy with this woman, neither of them are seeking her out. They just seem to be
right.
moaning at one another about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one really odd moment later on where Bruce says, like, yeah, I want her so much I can taste it. I don't believe that.
No.
You're acting exactly the same as you are the whole time. You're just doing your little weird smile. Next up, dinner date with Julie.
Isn't this
The
terrible? I mean,
most passionless, yeah.
but it's also it's her the nearest she gets to a scene, and all she
Yeah.
is there to is so they can do the cliche of him getting her name wrong and her morphing into Poison Ivy, which I think you can tell is going to happen
Yeah. A
in
while
the first
before.
5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so you're not even listening to what she's saying as she
Hmm.
valiantly gets through take 24 and is still
Right.
trying and failing to land it. Um,
Yeah, she's saying that she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. I don't know why.
it's sounding even less sure about this than he is.
Yeah, like, not actually dramatized in this film is why she's into him, how that operates.
It's such a strange. Is that character there just solely so they can do that scene?
Oh, just to show that like he's thinking about poison ivy.
It's
Yeah, I
because
think
I
you might
can't
be
really
right.
see any. It's just she has, even with like editing around a performance,
Hmm.
there's no story
There's nothing
beats
for her to do.
that
Yeah,
involved. It just feels like such a labored way to get to something
yeah,
that's just a throwaway.
yeah. The world just yawns. I think we look at this scene and we just move on. And next up is the bizarre motorcycle race, and I am interested in your thoughts on this.
Well, this is really weird, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's a location, and we've not set other than some establishing shots of Wayne Manor and that
Hmm.
little walk through that garden. We've not gone outside once, and suddenly we're on these LA underpasses, which have
Right.
and it sort of made some attempts to sort of graffiti them up and light them so they look like the rest of the film. But suddenly, the shots are composed differently. They're sort of lit in
Hmm.
a different way, and it does feel tonally like it's from a slightly grungier, more urban film. And there's
Hmm.
some weird stuff as well with the extras because they're like droogs from A
Yeah.
Clockwork Orange, and there's this other sort of set of people who are like new romantics, and
Yeah. And then a group that is basically like Cats. They're from like
mm,
the musical Cats, and then there's some from pre-revolution France. That it feels kind of Rocky Horror Picture Show to me, where you get like a group of extras and you dress them all as weird as you possibly can, as different from each other as you
mm.
possibly can.
Yeah, it does feel like a sort of someone junior in the costume department got given a project and
Right.
went.
Yes.
And it's an odd kind of it's an odd time to break out of this world into something different. And I
Mm.
can't decide if it's refreshing or irksome because,
I don't really understand why it's even here in the movie.
well, I think it's there because if it's not, Batgirl stroke Barbara gets absolutely nothing to do.
I guess that's true.
I mean, I think it's there to
Yeah.
give her a set piece because otherwise, really, her scene would be meeting Poison Ivy later on.
Right.
The,
But she's
the
got a
problem is,
helmet
is
now.
that this is sort of Barbara's big scene.
Yeah. But you don't
She's
see her
not
face.
really in it. She's in it
Yeah.
at the very start, and then we're into stunts and reaction
Yeah.
shots. There isn't dialogue or
Hmm.
anything, so it doesn't really do probably what it's there to do. There's a sort of
Yeah.
simpler scene about, and this is not a film that's interested in simple scenes, but
Yeah.
you could structure it in a way that, well, Bruce and girlfriend
Julie. Yeah.
Julie are having their sexless date. Um, Dick and Barbara are wandering Gotham, having an equally sort of sexless night out, but
Hmm.
and actually sort of sketching some character stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, it's this
Or they run into some trouble and it turns
and
out,
run it, yeah,
yeah,
exactly, and then
that
throw
she can
some mild
handle herself.
peril
Yeah, she can handle herself
and
better than we think she can.
just do it as a much simpler scene. But instead, it's an effects extravaganza that took a week of night shoots
Yeah.
and ultimately is probably completely superfluous in that form.
And one thing that I think is funny about it is that there's all these little sections of
Mm-hmm.
track that they're going down, and it is obviously like the same tunnel
Mm-hmm.
that they all zoom
Yeah.
down and then they cut and you dress it differently, and now they
Mm-hmm.
come and zoom down the exact same little section of tunnel, and the whole thing is just like kind of all of those strung together with different like little ramps and little like sparky explosions and stuff.
It's very repetitious, and it's sort of the one sort of curveball it has is the lorry that sort of scoots in front, and that's actually quite nicely done, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah, it just feels like it goes on, and then it gets this
it does.
weird thing where we suddenly cut to this model shot where
Hmm.
we're way up in the air, and
We're on a bridge. They say something about
I
like, yeah,
I have got
get
it's
them
not
onto the
like there's
bridge.
even sort of an intermediate shot where they're kind of going uphill. I
Yeah,
just do
no,
not understand what the geography of that is, and and we're very clearly we're on like an underpass under a freeway or something at the start.
yeah,
It's not, we're
you're
low,
not high up like that. Yeah, this is just
and
the
then
weird Gotham City geography.
we are high. We are literally hundreds of feet in the air, seemingly. It's
Yeah,
very, very strange. Yeah, it's a weird sequence.
and
And
ending with Robin and Barbara, they're both hanging off of the edge of this bridge, but he's hanging off by one shoe, and then he's got
And he takes
one
his helmet
hand.
off as well
Yeah,
with, I don't know, his third arm or something. It was kind of work out how.
yeah,
That's another one where they do a jump cut to avoid showing how they possibly got out of this because
absolutely. Yeah. The only
it
thing I
would
can
have
think of
taken hours.
is just like the little Robin orang, little grappling hook. He just uses that again. I guess we have been trained to recognize that, but yeah, but no, there's no connection between like that and then like the literally it cuts to him and Barbara somewhere else,
Hmm.
back at Wayne Manor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that happens a few times in this film, but that one is just. I mean, that was the worst because
Yeah,
it feels
it's really
like it's
obvious.
meant to be. I think we're meant to think this is like a really sort of joyous, uplifting moment, and it's just really distracting
Really not.
because odd cut.
Yeah. And so now all of a sudden she is upset that Alfred has lived the life of a servant and subjugated all his life and dreams for somebody else. This comes out of exactly nowhere.
Well, this is again. It feels like there's a sort of hangover from an earlier draft of her where she had a character.
Right.
Has she been thrown out of Oxbridge University, is a real place as we know, because she is there a class thing going on there that she couldn't get along with? It feels like something's there, but it's sort
Mm-hmm.
of bubbling around in a very subliminal way. And yeah, it's this really odd gear change where I've been living in quite merrily
Mm-hmm.
in this billionaire's mansion. Now I'm really angry about
Yeah.
billionaires expecting their servants to work for them.
Yeah, I don't understand Barbara's character at all, what they're trying to do with her.
Again,
Uh
I think there's a much simpler scene where
yeah.
it's her and Dick talking about what it's like living with someone who's really rich, and
Mm,
is what is Bruce like? Is he, because she has no curiosity about Bruce whatsoever.
no. Yeah.
Feels odd. I mean, she doesn't have any curiosity in Dick either. So
Yeah, it's funny when he's in the same position in the last movie and he really wants to investigate. Like he's kind of he figures out that Bruce is Batman by
is that what's wrong with her character?
that she doesn't figure anything out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the many. Yeah.
I think it should be that from the minute she gets there, she does not buy that these people are who they say they are.
Yeah.
That's
I,
yeah, I
I
think
guess
that's
they're
the
just
problem.
I guess they're just not interested in her. Like there's so many.
Oh,
I think in
the
this conversation we've come up with like five different things that she could do
mhm.
and she hasn't done any of them.
No.
We get Ivy breaking Freeze out of the asylum.
Again, I really like all of
I'm a
this.
fan. Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I think it's also I think it's Uma Thurman's best stuff because it's basically just her and Arnold Schwarzenegger doing two-handersy. They're
Yeah.
doing a two-hander and being very amused. And I like the whole thing about her being his sister, which just seems like such a pointless thin ruse. But
Right. Yeah,
it was
the guards say, "Hey, your sister's here," and then she walks in looking the way that she looks. And here's where she has those like twin cones on her
yeah.
head, which don't
So
really
she
make a ton of sense. And like, yeah, no, this is somebody's sister.
So I was just, mind you, it's Arkham, so they probably get
Yes.
things like this all the time. But
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, I just like the whole business of it. I think I also, if we skip past the bit that's a sort of crib from the animated series with Mr. Freeze makes his little model out of ice.
Oh yeah, that's here.
That's not at the head of this scene, isn't it?
Yes.
Or is it, again in a very shouty, gaudy, shrieking parakeet of a movie?
Yeah.
This is actually, I think, a really nice moment.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's a sort of nice moment. It's an interesting sort of moment of calm
Hmm.
that works in a way that all the stuff saying Wayne Manor, which I think is trying to do that as well,
Yeah.
feels like we just the movie goes into sleep mode for a bit.
Yeah. And this
Um,
is and this is connecting Freeze emotionally as well to like
it's also
he has actual trauma. Like it's about him missing his wife and wishing that she was with him.
and it's also it shows he's artistic. It
Yeah,
shows he
yeah.
there's something there's an appreciation of beauty. There's lots of without and it's a dialogue free scene. Again,
Yeah.
a film where people usually, if they want you to know something about them, say it out
Expressing it a lot.
loud
Yeah.
with block capitals. I just like the fact, and it's done in one shot as well. It's a nice sort of elegant
Yeah.
tracking shot that sort of pivots around him. I just think it's really, really nice. And then Poison Ivy turns up and
And
files
crazy
it up,
happens.
and it's all good. Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny that like he's the biggest and the craziest. And when people are saying that they don't like the film, they usually go to him for like, what's the thing that you don't like about it? Um, they talk about like Arnold Schwarzenegger is ridiculous as Mr. Freeze. And what you and I are saying is like, I think they get him right. Like, I don't,
I think they've
I
got
have,
their money's worth out of him. I think that's the he turned. I think you can see in that performance why he was at the time the biggest movie star there was, and he could
right.
have on 25 million to
Yeah.
do as little work as possible on this film.
Yeah.
But whenever it, I say, the whole operation has been built around those moments he is available to be in front of the camera. But
Right.
whenever he's in close up,
He nails it
he
every time.
nails it, and he's doing exactly what you want him to do,
Yeah.
and giving the whole thing a kind of energy that really everything else should follow. And when it
Hmm.
does follow, it really works, I think.
Right. Which then it does because now Poison Ivy's coming in and they're doing that two-handed scene. Yeah. They
Which
break
is,
out of this. I'm sorry, were
yeah,
you gonna?
and again, I like the breakout as well because
Yeah.
it's this idea that Poison Ivy has a go and doesn't quite manage it, and then
Right.
Mr. Freeze is actually shown being kind of clever and ingenious, and
Yeah.
and then they escape in this ridiculous way. Oh, and I also love the shot of Bane with Mr. Freeze's outfit, his armor, in that sort of piled up in that shopping trolley, kind of
Yeah.
rolling down the corridor. There's just something very, it's like backstage theater about that.
Yeah. And they end up in that same thing that has puzzled us before, where like you look down and it's just
We're
another
above
cliff.
cliffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna plummet hundreds and hundreds of feet. But...
The city composed entirely of cliff tops.
And there is, I mean, unfortunately, we do miss what state Poison Ivy would have been when she dragged herself out of those waters.
That is true. Yeah.
Maybe Mr. Freeze was gentlemanly and unfolded his wings and fluttered down to safety with her.
Yeah. Bane can
He was
just
like painful.
you can drop Bane on his head, he'll probably be fine.
He should.
The investigation in Freeze's hideout, I think, is beautiful because we get to see there's no reason for us now to be doing the scene that we do in his hideout. It's just that his hideout is awesome. And so yeah, let's have some scenes in there.
The thing I like, and this isn't quite the right film to do it, but I like the business of Batman being a detective.
Mm-hmm.
And these films often get simplified to Batman,
Beats
waits,
people up. Yeah.
and then beats them up. Yeah. And so the idea that Batman goes somewhere to find something out, and then he sort of they piece together the thing about Mr. Freeze's wife,
Mm-hmm.
and McGregor's syndrome, which sadly there is no cure for.
Yeah.
Well,
this is also where Gordon shows him a picture of Ivy and Bane. This
picture.
the picture of Ivy and Bane getting off the plane.
Hang it in the National Portrait Gallery. It's extraordinary. It's like they're so close to a running joke that Bane should always seem to be wearing some completely unconvincing disguise.
Yeah. But they don't really, they don't point that out as enough. Yeah, you know what? In the last scene with the prison break, like if he'd been wearing a uniform,
he should. Yeah, no, that's exactly
with a little,
it.
with a little like.
It should be like a guards thing with a little hat.
Yeah.
Perched.
Oh, that would have been fun. So they are now finding out the dust has worn off. They found out that Poison Ivy poisons people. Robin's line is, "Well, she's definitely evil," which, okay, thank you, Robin. And meanwhile, so they are looking at Nora in her cryo tank, and then meanwhile, right under them, through a grating in the floor, we see Freeze and Ivy immediately down there, and they have a whole conversation about what they're planning to do.
I mean, I kind of like that sort of. Well, we both watched Doctor Who and Dark Shadows, so I think we're used people crouching around corners having very loud conversations. People can
Yes.
not hear.
Yeah.
So I don't mind that, and I think it is actually I kind of like the absurdity of
Hmm.
that these people are so close and
Yeah.
not interacting. The sort
It
of
is silly and
oh
cute. It's
jeopardy of that.
yeah, and it's sort of like this panto moment of
Panto, yes, pure panto.
yeah.
I think particularly on
Hmm.
that set, because if you're going to go really goofy, that's where it's going to happen and should.
Yeah. We've got a couple of more action sequences coming up. So
Mm-hmm.
one is Mr. Freeze uh stomping out into his lair, grabbing some diamonds and freezing all the cops. He turns on the
Yeah.
freeze gas and freezes all the cops, and they try to chase him upstairs, and he kicks them, and they all tumble down the stairs together like the Keystone Cops.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Freeze can do nothing wrong for me. Anything he does, I kind of love it. How about the fight with Bane? Because that's the other thing that's happening in another part of the factory.
Terrible.
I agree. That's where I thought we were going.
Yeah, I think it's also, I mean, it doesn't help this sort of cross cut.
Yeah.
You sort of want you sort of want them both to be a glorious spectacle. Again, it feels like, Bane is just not played by any.
Hmm.
Had they cast someone, well,
Right, that would have been great. Yeah.
cast an actor as Bane, I
Yeah.
think the whole way you shoot him would be different. The whole way he appears in scenes would be different. But because he's basically a supporting artist,
Hmm.
that's the way everything with him is perfunctory.
Yeah, he's
It's
just a big thing that kind of
He's a
smashes
big thing. He's
down.
a big
Yeah.
thing, and occasionally there's a sort of there's a joke, and it's usually a joke made at the fact that he's a prop doing something inappropriate.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not actually Bane has a joke,
Or it's that he can say one word at a time,
or he
basically.
says, "Yeah," which
Yeah.
again is almost making a joke out of the fact this guy can't
That
deliver dialogue.
he's not doing anything. Yeah.
There is this problem that every time you cut away, particularly you're cutting away from Mister Freeze to
Right. To
Bane,
this, it's just not that interesting.
everyone's just looking at their watches, going, "Can we go back over there, please?"
Right. And this is a much smaller set too. This
It
is
is.
kind of
It's almost. I mean,
cramped.
this is almost sort of 1966 Batman,
Right.
not
Yeah.
the scene
Yeah.
set.
Tiny little studio set.
It feels it feels a bit TV. Although I like uh, the child in me likes the fact there is a sort of big vat of gloop that exists for no other reason than for a character to
For
fall into it in the
Robin to
most
fall into.
like
Yeah.
way possible.
And then Ivy points out um the action figure thing. She actually just she
Yes, he
says
says it.
the quiet part out loud. She says, "I'm a lover, not a fighter. That's why every Poison Ivy action figure comes complete with him," which is exactly correct.
Yeah, the action figure no one wants.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to buy it in a 2-pack because we're not going to sell it any other way.
Yep. Yeah, and really mostly they just didn't like that was there's 100 Batman toys, there's a whole bunch of Robin toys, there's a whole bunch of Mr. Freeze toys. And Poison Ivy, I think, gets like that one, actually that 2-pack of like Poison Ivy and Bane, and then that's it for them. Ivy's vamping Robin some more. Batman's telling her, don't kiss her. He's figured out that her lips are poison. And basically, what this is all about is just Bane throwing Robin into a vat of pistachio ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
which, according to the rules of Batman, means that he is now a supervillain. He is an ice cream themed supervillain.
Ice cream. Yeah, he would be. Yeah, it's very satisfying. I think actually because Robin has been so juvenile and so irritating, it's just like that.
That
There
is
is
fun.
something. I'm not sure it's meant to be, but there's something really satisfying about seeing him stomp out of that, and then
Yeah,
presumably having to do the walk of shame home
all sticky.
to presumably swearing under his breath.
Yeah. And once again, Ivy and Bane get away because Batman is just like helping Robin out of the ice cream vat, which he absolutely could have done himself. These are very slow villains, and Batman really does not put a lot of effort into any of this. Then we get to their split hideout. So now Ivy goes back to the Turkish bath, and she's got her flower area, and now he has built his own little ice area, which is right next to it.
Ice and ice.
Yeah, which I like. It's very much like it's kind of a Disneyland thing. It's kind of like a carnival thing of like here's this room and then that room is themed completely differently.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
I like that. And I sort of like this idea of them as very odd neighbors.
Yeah. And she tells Freeze that Batman has deactivated Nora and she is dead. And he yells, "You lie!" And then she's got the necklace. He takes it, he looks at it, and we get a little frozen tear running down his cheek, which is another little, I feel, perfect moment where like a little tear goes down and it freezes and it turns into a little diamond and then it blows away.
Oh, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
good.
And then she talks him into murdering everybody in the entire world.
Yes. Well, I guess he's having a bad day, so
He really is. And then everything after that, there's some more bad news about Alfred. Now Alfred is lying down. He's got McGregor syndrome. I don't know if they've considered putting him in a frozen tank. That seems to be effective.
Well, there's one going spare apparently.
Yeah. Well, the frozen tank salesman is, should be at the door trying to make another sale.
Yeah, I mean the whole Alfred thing is really weird because it's sort of, and again, it wouldn't be this film. I almost wish they just had the, in this sort of Teflon world where no one gets injured or scratched or there's any danger of dying. If actually you had a sort of real human death happens not because of anything, eventually it just happens because he's old.
Right.
You can see that being quite moving, but there's this sort of, it's this odd sort of false jeopardy that it's set up in a way that we know because it's the same thing that Mr. Freeze's wife has got, that it's going to be cured that way. And again, I can't decide if it's for the sort of film they're trying to make, it probably is the right kind of jeopardy and it does sort of thematically work, but it's also kind of tiresome to me.
It is to me too. Yeah. I think it would be much stronger if it had something to do with the villains. If this was a thing that Mr. Freeze did or a thing that Poison, especially if it was intentional, if the villains had targeted Alfred in some kind of way, that would have been, I think, really dramatic and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that sort of odd thing. I suppose it's in these kind of films, you never really want something to happen just by complete coincidence.
Yeah, yeah.
It
should be linked up to something. There's one more Robin rebellion before we get to the end of Act 2, where now he's in love with Poison Ivy again. This is where Bruce says, like, "I want her so badly I can taste it," which is not.
Yeah, sure you can.
Yeah, not dramatized in this film. And Bruce says to Dick, "She's clouded your mind and you're not thinking straight." And Robin says, "Oh, but I am, for the first time in a long time." And so if you insist on the homoerotic reading, that's like your one line that I think everybody, when they're writing their film student paper, their essay on homosexuality in Batman and Robin, like that's the line that is the big money line for them.
Yeah, I can sort of see that. I mean, I think it's thin gruel, but okay.
It certainly is. And Robin shouts that he is tired of living in Batman's shadow. He says all that ends.
He's going to go and sulk in his room for a bit.
Yeah, one more rebellion from him. He says all that ends right now. So all that is ending right now. The Batman and Robin partnership is falling to pieces because of a deadly dame that, when you get right down to it, neither of them likes very much. That means this is the end of Act 2 of Batman and Robin. Act 3 is just as disappointing, if not more so. I will see you back here for Act 3 of Batman and Robin on the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening.
Let's cool it for now. I've got someone I want you to meet. His name is Bane.
A laundry service that delivers. Wow!